Before going to the official session, our host country secretariat coordinator, Aravella, has a technical announcement. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Zal. 3 announcements, very briefly. The whole country prepared a number of gifts for you, and I think some of you didn't get your personal gifts. So, in the reception, you can some packages with gifts are waiting for you. Second, at the end of the session today at 6:30, there is a cocktail reception that is offered by the Cyprus, by the Republic of Cyprus, and mainly from the Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Education, in collaboration with the Deputy Ministry of Tourism. And the third one is that the people that will participate to the side events in Cyprus Institute at 6 o'clock, they will have the possibility at the end of their sessions, of their side events, to be back for the cocktail for the cocktail reception. Shuttle buses, they will wait for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Aravella. And now, in the same manner as this morning, I would like to thank our distinguished co-chair of this session at the beginning, Mr. Kostas Tkadis, His Excellency Minister of Agriculture and Environment. Please take over.
Thank you, Zal. Distinguished guests, dear colleagues, dear participants, let me welcome you all to the second part of agenda item number 3, titled Environment in the Pan-European Region, Visions of 2030 and Beyond. Firstly, I would like to invite all delegations to refer to the summary of key findings and policy messages of the Pan-European Environmental Assessment as presented in the relevant document and to the published Pan-European Assessment that was distributed today. It is a great honor to first invite Ms. Elizabeth Quintas da Silva of Portugal, Chair of the UNESCO Committee of Environmental Policy, to moderate a discussion on the state of the environment in the Pan-European region. The panelists who will participate in the discussion are my very dear colleague, Savas Perdios, Deputy Minister of Tourism of the Republic of Cyprus, Mrs. Nino Tandilashvili, Deputy Minister of Environmental Protection and Agriculture of Georgia, and Mr. Yusipek Gazbegov, Deputy Chairman of the State Committee for Ecology and Environment Protection of Uzbekistan. Elizabeth, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, the Minister, and good afternoon to all participants to this amazing conference. The item on which I'm supposed to moderate the discussion, it's not an easy item. Environment in the Pan-European region, visions for 2030 and beyond, and we have heard so much about this. Yesterday and today, so much has been said. You received yesterday, you had it in your tables, the Pan-European Assessment, the 7 Pan-European Assessment. And as you know for sure, the first one was published in 1995. I believe that an interesting exercise is to make a comparison between the findings of the first assessment and the findings of this assessment. I don't want you to be depressed. Of course, that is not our aim here, but I think it's interesting to do this exercise. I did it myself, and there are important findings from this comparison. The assessment that you received yesterday and that we are going to discuss today is the result of a work of 2 years of many, many people. And it has the stamp of 2 international organizations. It has the stamp of UNEC and it has the stamp of UNEP. So I come to my wish today. I have 2 wishes to express during my interventions here today in this session. My first wish is that in the 8th Pan-European assessment, we will have also the stamp of at least other 2 international organizations. I will not say their names. I will just say that one starts by OEC, and the other EE, perhaps an A at the end. Let's see what happens in the future. But I'm counting that the next assessment will join not only the contributions, because these 2 organizations contributed significantly to the work, but also with their stamp. I believe that working together is also a slogan we should use, and they use it for preparing this kind of very important reports. So, as I said, much has been said yesterday about the results of the assessment. And when I was preparing with colleagues for this session, with colleagues from UNEP and UNEC, and we were discussing the findings, I asked them, so do you want me to be the bird of disgrace? And they replied immediately, but do you want to lie? And no, I don't want to lie in this session. I don't want to lie to anyone. So because I do not want to lie, I decided not to tell you, not to speak about the free self-inflicted planetary crisis. And not to say that while countries in the Pan-European region are expanding policies to tackle air pollution, and that some programs has been achieved, increased efforts are needed. I will also not say that although countries committed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, net emissions in the region are still rising, or that although decarbonization is becoming a strong narrative across the region, action still lags behind. I also decided not to say or not to underline that diffuse pollution in urban and industrial wastewater discharges remains significant in many locations, and that persistent organic contaminants are of great public health concern. Or that practical achievements on water pollution are there, but they have not yet been implemented as deeply as they could be or should be. That the status of ecosystems remains a cause of concern. That overall biodiversity loss continues to occur. That soil sealing remains an issue of concern. As you can see, I was worried with this intervention because I really sound like the bird of disgrace. And that definitely waste generation continues to rise, and exposure to hazardous chemicals also continues to rise. But when you look at the assessment, and there are so many findings which deserve our concern in the assessment, you will also see that there are many suggestions, many ideas for action to overcome these problems. On sustainable infrastructure, there is a concrete call for using nature-based solutions, resource efficiency, recycling, reuse in an environmental, responsible, social, inclusive, economically viable way. On circular tourism economy, the advice is to develop accessibility of data on circular economy in tourism sector, because this is an essential step to evaluate the most effective and high impact investments. So what are we all encouraged to do? Because we are here also representing our countries, our governments, our administration. We are encouraged by the assessment to promote participation in multilateral environmental agreements and the harmonization of policies and legislation, to develop and adopt common and coherent policies for emerging topics, including circular economy and sustainable infrastructure, to strengthen mechanisms for monitoring the effectiveness of policies and legislation, including at international level. COVID offered us an opportunity. It was terrible from almost all points of view, but it also offered an opportunity to correct the path of resource exploitation and greenhouse gas emissions. So, and because I do not want to be the bird of disgrace and instead be the bird of hope, you will hear from our panelists today about concrete ideas, concrete actions, measures that in their countries were implemented that respond to the challenges identified in the assessment. And as such, and because we need to speed up and I'm not contributing to having a short session, I will ask my next panelists, and in fact, we will have a video from Ms. Viviane Huygens, Minister for the Environment of the Netherlands. We will hear a testimony through a video. And the question I asked her, well, what actions were being taken in the Netherlands to halt and reverse the continuing growth in municipal solid waste and to move waste management to circularity? We will hear the answer.
Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, I can't be with you in person today, but it's an honor and pleasure to address this session virtually. I am glad that the 7th Pan-European Environmental Assessment has shown some progress in key areas such as atmospheric air, greenhouse gas emissions, fresh water, chemicals, and waste. Despite this progress, many challenges in our region still exist, like on waste management, the topic of this session. The generated waste quantities are still growing, and we have to change that. The good thing is, internationally, the focus on circular economy has increased, and that's important. A circular economy isn't nice to have, it's need to have, especially if we want to tackle the 3 main planetary crises: climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution, and securing the supply of key resources for the energy transition. In our current linear economic system, we're running out of natural resources. We use too many raw materials and discard too many too soon. With a more efficient use of raw materials, we can reduce annual global emissions by 20% by 2050. What are we doing in the Netherlands? In my country, we're taking action based on a national government-wide program for a circular economy. We're working with industry, scientific institutions, and society to find and implement the best solutions. The Netherlands is a front-runner in recycling, but there is still more to be done. We need other strategies as well to increase, reuse, and repair. That's why we'll be adopting various initiatives, like the new legislation on single-use plastics. As of 2024, the use of disposable cups and cutlery will be banned at work, at festivals, and in restaurants and cafes. There's also the new extended producer responsibility legislation on textiles. From 2023, fashion brands, retailers, and importers of garments will bear responsibility for the collection, sorting, recycling, and reuse of products that they bring to the market. My message today is a positive one, as it can be done. The Netherlands stands ready to work with you to make the transition to a circular, low-carbon future. By working together, we can deliver on our shared global goals, the Paris Agreement goals, and the 2030 Agenda. Let's go circular together. I wish you all an inspiring session.
Thank you very much for the important contribution. And next in my list, I have Mr. Savas Perdios, Deputy Minister of Tourism, Republic of Cyprus. You have the floor.
Thank you. Well, first of all, welcome to Cyprus. I'm really glad you're all here. You flew from around the world, and that's a big honor for us. Now, you know, it's great to be a tourism destination, but there is one problem with being an island. You all want to come and visit us at the same time in the summer. This means that an excessive burden falls on our coastal areas because they are the most popular. And this makes our tourism industry very resource intensive. I will give you some examples. 90% of all our bed capacity is in coastal areas. 80% of all catering and entertainment operations are in coastal areas. All of our largest infrastructure projects are in coastal areas. So what does this mean? Environmental damage to our coastal areas, but more importantly for me, inequalities of income distribution and employment opportunities. Because if all the jobs are in the coastal areas, people leave from our villages to go and work and live in the coastal areas. This does not mean we don't want you to come on holiday in the summer. That's not what I'm saying. We, as a Ministry of Tourism, are doing two types of things to mitigate the fact that we are having this resource-intensive tourism in the summer. And one is macro level, wider policies. And the second type is more specific types of policies at the micro level. Although I do not have a lot of time, I will be giving you some concrete examples. And if you need some more information from me later or my team, we're here for you. So in terms of macro or wider scope policies, we, through the implementation of the National Tourism Strategy that we began in January 2020, are actively trying to spread the benefits from tourism to the whole island. And this means making sure that our villages also benefit from tourism. Also, before the pandemic, 75% of our arrivals were in the summer. By the year 2030, we aim to make that 60%, meaning that 40% will be here in the winter, hence not at coastal areas. And we are one of the few, if not the only, let's say few countries in the world that over the next 3 years will be measuring the actual carrying capacity of Cyprus as a tourism destination. So for 3 years, we will be measuring how much more our island can take. And by the way, our target in terms of arrivals growth until the year 2030 is only 10%. So from now until 2030, our growth target is only 10%, and that is on purpose. Now, in terms of some specific policies at the micro level, I want to start by saying that we are pushing a lot to include as many bathing sites into the Blue Flag certification. And we achieve that how and why? Because all facilities in Cyprus need to be connected to a public sewage system. Nobody's allowed to throw stuff in the sea. Obviously, waste disposal, you get permits to go and dispose of waste at specific locations and not just anywhere. And finally, with regards to this point, the marine spatial planning policy of our government is coming into effect very, very soon. And this will not only help us protect maritime Natura 2000 sites, but also, again, to spread visitation to areas which haven't yet seen any benefits from tourism. Obviously, this has led to us being the #1 ranked country in Europe for cleanest bathing waters. And I'm not the one saying that. The European Environmental Agency is saying that 100% of the sites tested in Cyprus have qualified as excellent quality water. And some new concepts we're running now, themed beaches. We're bringing out beaches that are plastic-free, others that are zero waste, others that are quiet beaches, so no mechanized sports, accessibility-friendly, etc. We have minimized cruise berths and calls, and actually, yeah, even though cruising is an important part of tourism industry, Cyprus will never be an over-visited cruising terminal. Finally, and this is my final point, All our current and future marinas are obliged to have ISO standards for environmental management. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Very important actions you have taken to tackle the challenges in the area of marine pollution and beach litter. I don't want to contradict you, but at least in Cyprus, summer starts in March and ends in December. So the season is much those of the other countries. I will now move to Ms. Nino Tandilashvili, Deputy Minister of Environmental Protection and Agriculture of Georgia. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak during this session. I will mainly speak about the renewable energy sources in the country, the potential that we have, and how this is related to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in this respect. Of course, the energy sector is one of the most important sectors for Georgia in reducing carbon emissions. Therefore, enhancing the share of renewable energy is a strategic priority for the country. It should be noted that there are significant steps that has been already taken by the government of Georgia in this regard. In particular, country has quite a potential with rich water resources, as well as solar and wind energy development potential and opportunities. We have recently adopted the laws on the promotion of use of energy production from renewable sources, and also the laws which is related to the energy performance in the buildings, aiming to increase savings, security, and independence of energy, as well as improving its efficiency. But of course, implementation part is much more complex and requires complex approaches from the government as well as from the private sector perspective. But when we are talking about the renewable as such, it is also very important to emphasize that the relevant environmental assessments and to reduce the risks on the environment and biodiversity, it's also important to be taken into consideration, as well as the social aspects. That is very important. I would like to also touch upon the transport sector as such, because we have recently had quite an initiatives in this respect. We have implemented tax exemption for electric and hybrid vehicles, which actually has resulted in 42% increase of hybrid and electric cars in the country. But still, the challenge is the development of public transportation, especially in the urban areas, where, of course, government has made quite an investment to develop the sustainable and green public transportation, especially in the capital cities and some of the other cities. But still, additional investments and further developments are needed in this sector, taking into consideration the fact that we have already the national and NDC document, a nationally determined contribution document, which clearly identifies transport sector as one of the key sectors, where energy sector as such, and transport, of course, where greenhouse gas emissions has to be reduced by 2030 up to 15% in the total emissions, which is 35% of the emissions compared to the 1990 level. So this is a national ambition for Georgia for 2030, and of course, within the long-term low-emission development strategy, we are also considering the climate neutrality by 2050. But of course, this all requires intensive cooperation among the government and private sector, and the investments, but also the careful policies, because country which is quite rich with, again, water resources and biodiversity, biodiversity, this has to be all balanced while we are we have to accomplish our international goals. And what is also important as a last point I would like to underline is that currently, together with the Ministry of Economy, we are developing climate and energy strategy and action plan that could allow us to interconnect these two important aspects and, of course, to reflect all our international and national obligations in this intersectoral complex strategy that and action plan that could allow us to further proceed and be, of course, more ambitious in terms of climate goals and reduction of carbon emissions, but at the same time greener in our concrete projects and upcoming investments. That's briefly from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much for so quickly sharing with us the important measures you have taken to enhance the share of renewable energy to reduce carbon emissions. And now I go to my last panelist, Deputy Chairman of the State Committee for Ecology and Environment Protection of Uzbekistan, Mr. Juzipbek Kazbekov. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, on behalf of the State Committee of Uzbekistan for Ecology and Environmental Protection, let me extend my greetings to distinguished delegates, member parties, and to all participants of the meeting. Urgency and complexity of today's environmental challenges in combination with COVID-19 pandemic impact have clearly demonstrated the importance of the maintaining a regular dialogue. Uzbekistan has suffered severely from the Aral Sea crisis, which has caused dramatic environmental challenges. Once known as the fourth largest lake in the world, Aral Sea has lost its 90% of water and become known as the world's biggest man-made environmental disaster, with more than 5 million hectares of dried sea bed, becoming a source of polluted dust and sandstorms. In 2018, on the initiative of our president, massive afforestation activities started. Now we reached about 2 million hectares of planting successful trees in the bottom of the Aral Sea. In the same year, 2018, Uzbekistan and the UN initiated the launch of the multi-party human security trust fund for the Aral Sea region. And now we are working on addressing the socio-economic and environmental issues in the Aral Sea region, in Karakalpakstan and the Khwarezm regions. Dear participants, since last EPR, Environmental Performance Review of Uzbekistan, government of Uzbekistan is continuing these afforestation activities also in the cities. So last year, our president initiated the Green Nation Yashil Makon initiative to plant 1 billion trees over the next 5 years. And the goal of that initiative is to increase the green index of our country by 30% from its current 8%. And in terms of waste management, the reforms are happening, and our government has adopted special strategy till 2028 on waste management. And now we increased, since 2016, our coverage rate from 29% to 93%. And the processing of the waste, we increased from 12% to 31%. And our government set very tight, ambitious targets to increase for more than 50%. In terms of the protected areas, for the last 6 years, Uzbekistan has established protected areas in the area of more than 4 million hectares, now reaching 6.3 million hectares, which is 14% of our territory. And the goal in the biodiversity strategy is to reach 17%, at least. So Uzbekistan has also set ambitious targets to double the energy efficiency by 2030. By 2025, after 3 years from now, we plan to launch solar and wind power plants with total capacity of 3,000 megawatts, and with that to increase the share of renewable energy to 25%. Moreover, this year we plan to host the International Green Energy Forum in Nukus, in Uzbekistan. And we are confident that the event will be an important step to implementation the UN's special resolution approved in 2018 by the initiative of our president, announcing the RLC region as a zone of environmental innovations and technologies to turn the problem into solutions. Furthermore, Global Green Growth Institute has established Uzbekistan's country office in February this year. We are committed to cooperate with leading environmental institutions and jointly move forward towards green transition to achieve the sustainable development goals. This year, New Uzbekistan, the strategy development program for New Uzbekistan, 5-year program till 2026, was adopted, and this is the most green strategy of our country. Although the environmental targets are mentioned there directly, also indirect the measures like moving towards green transport, green energy, digitalization of our economy, green economy, and smart cities. These kind of measures, indirect measures, are also contributing to the environmental sustainability of Uzbekistan. We look forward for continued collaboration with the UNEC and the EU countries to restore our nature, building on the shared successes and working together towards 2030 and beyond time. With this, I would like to thank all of you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chairman, for explaining a set of measures that you have taken specifically in the area of biodiversity, but others also. We have listened from the distinguished panelists the identification of a set of measures, of a set of actions that have been taken in their respective countries that contribute definitely to overcoming the problems that we still have. So these conferences are also a learning exercise, a share of best practices. So let's take these good ideas home. I personally believe that it is always possible to go against all odds, meaning that even if the situation that you see it's referred to, it's shown, revealed at the Pan-European assessment gets worse, we will be able to go against all odds. But I think that we should try our best not to get there and to stop it before, to reverse it before. And this brings me to my second wish. Today, when I was listening to one of the interventions from the Deputy Director of UNEP, she referred to the dark side of development. And immediately I thought not only of the dark side of development, but the dark side that we listen, I'm sure that you all listen to, referred many times in Star Wars. There was a dark side in Star Wars. And this reminded me that I have always wanted to speak like Master Yoda did. You know that this green gentleman, Master Yoda. And Master Yoda, he had a very interesting way of speaking. So I will try to make this exercise with you to see if you're able to complete my sentence. So, if concerned we are, if aware we are, if ambitious we are, if committed we are, what would Master Yoda say? Successful we will be. And I'm sure that we will all be successful. Thank you, thank you.
And he was green.
And he was green, yes, he was green, right. So, and I give the floor back to our chair.
Thank you, Elisabetta, for these, I would say, inspiring wishes. And thank you for moderating the discussion and for your concluding remarks. Before closing this agenda item, I also want to thank all the panelists for their valuable interventions on how different concerns are addressed at their national level. Thank you indeed. And thank you all for your attention and participation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Minister. And now we are switching to agenda item 6, which is applying principles of circular economy to sustainable tourism. And I would ask my colleagues to change the nameplates in the podium because we have new podium members. So the members of the new podium, renewed podium, Her Excellency Ms. Mirela Kumbaro, Minister of Tourism and Environment of Albania, will be the chair of this thematic segment of today. State Secretary in the Ministry of Economy and Sustainable Development of Croatia, Mr. Mario Siljek, Chair of the UNEC Committee on Unital Policy, Ms. Elisabetta Quintas da Silva, you're already here, and also Principal Advisor and Chief, Sustainable Development and Gender Unit of UNEC, Ms. Monica Linna.
Hello.
Hello. Just to repeat that we will have some agenda items which were to be considered on morning. Actually, only one presentation. It will be added to our today's program. And then the same way as on mornings, but I hope in time, we will be splitting the audience towards the round tables. But Madam Chair, I'm intervening now your domain. Please take over.
Thank you. Welcome, dear colleagues and friends. In this world dominated by Globish language, and being in a UN conference, I would choose today to use the other language, official language of UN, of our common organization, which means le français. So I have not often the opportunity to speak in this other official language, so I'm gonna use it in order to remember that we are from multicultural identities, cultures and languages. Bien.
So I'm now going to switch to French. My name is Miela Kumbaro. I'm Minister of Tourism and Environment of Albania. It is my honor to head the ministry for these two very important sectors. It's a speciality of Albania, in fact, that we have combined in the same portfolio two sectors which might seem to be hostile to each other in our collective understanding and perception: tourism and environment. Environment should be our prime absolute concern, not only because we are all concerned about our planet, which is in danger, but also, as Antoine de Saint-Exupéry said, the famous French writer, just to pay tribute to France, which just received the Nobel Prize for Literature for one of their authors. So Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, the author of The Petit Prince, The Little Prince, said, "We do not inherit Earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children." We know this and we need to carry out important activities, but they're not enough yet to save the planet and to face up to the challenges of climate change. Tourism is often considered as being pernicious and harmful to the environment, and it can be. But let's not be hypocritical here. We all know full well that humanity will not give up on tourism. We're not going to stop being tourists. And we've seen after the pandemic that there has been a rapid return to tourism. Albania, with more than 19% of foreign visitors this year, is the preferred destination in Europe and the second destination globally, which has now seen more tourists than before the pandemic. And these are data from the World Organization for Tourism. And so I'd like to invite you to visit Albania. It's a new tourist destination. It's a new tourist destination, but also it is a country which has 21% of its territory protected as nature reserves, and we aim to achieve 30% of protected areas by 2030. The challenges over recent years have shown us that our quest for a better world cannot be achieved through figures and data, but through solidarity in societies, through resilience, and through clear thinking about sustainable development. We need to change our attitudes, change our mindset to rethink tourism, seeing it not just as an activity that involves travel, but as an activity for sustainable development, which gives us pleasure, which promotes citizens' responsibility and accountability and empowerment. The tourist industry is profoundly linked on different resources, different flows of assets, resources, and value chains in society, in agriculture, to the food sector, environment, the built environment, and the transport sector, just to mention a few. And the tourist sector is highly dependent on all of these resources. All sectors which feed into tourism need to question what they are doing and to reinvent themselves in the light of the circular economy. This is what is required by the new philosophy that we have. We need a change in mindset. We need to do an enormous amount of awareness raising work and education to transform enterprises and to invest in research. I'm not here to make speeches. I'm here to moderate this session on circular economy and sustainable tourism. But I want to mention these dynamic trends that we are here to develop together and expand on together in this meeting at intergovernmental level, in our national policies, and at the level of our businesses and enterprises. So I'm going to switch back to English now.
Start by small actions, little movement. Can we moderate a little bit the air conditioning in this room in order to save energy, in order to protect the climate by the greenhouse gases, and because also it's too cold inside. So this is the first step before to continue to talk again about the circular economy and the sustainable tourism in this very interesting conference of UNECE. Okay, I think that somebody is taking care of. Let's give me the possibility to invite Mr. Mario Siljek, State Secretary in the Ministry of Economy and Sustainable Development of Croatia, to make the keynote address. Floor to you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, dear colleagues. It is my great pleasure to speak here today on behalf of the Croatian government. This gathering is unique as it brings together environment and tourism. I'm particularly pleased to put the spotlight on tourism and to give an introduction to the discussion on applying the principles of circular economy to tourism. Before I dive deeper into the topic, allow me some general remarks on tourism. For us in Croatia, tourism is an extremely important sector. We have a long tradition in, and tourism is a part of our identity, culture, and not least economy. Tourism generates around 20% of Croatia's GDP, and it is a vital source of both direct and indirect employment. Globally, tourism currently accounts for 10% of global GDP, and it is responsible for 1 in 10 jobs worldwide. Tourism is also very codependent and vulnerable to different threats, and we witnessed it shut down fast when faced with threats such as a pandemic, environmental disasters, wars, etc. The COVID-19 outbreak has had a severe impact, resulting in a global tourism economy decline of 80% in 2020 and a loss of around 100 million jobs. Generally, the recovery process is rather slow, with a growing awareness of the need to improve resilience of tourism against a range of threats. Now more than ever, we can easily see the connection between having possibilities to travel, explore, and meet, and our well-being. Therefore, UNWTO forecasts of continual growth of tourism do not come as a surprise. Now we know that by 2030, tourism is expected to grow far beyond the previous projection of 1.8 million international tourists per year. Being aware of the many benefits, we are also aware of the challenges that the growth of tourism poses on the environment, climate change, nature, and the local population. In point of fact, the tourism sector is already facing the challenge of decoupling its growth from the use of natural resources. With growing awareness, tourism has recently been put under public and political spotlight. Within its new industrial strategy, the European Union decided to address tourism first, and the European Commission adopted the tourism transition pathway at the beginning of this year to facilitate the sector transition towards more sustainability and better resilience. We are committed to contributing to the shaping of our common global vision and goals. Therefore, today I speak to you also in the capacity of the Croatian presidency of the UNWTO Committee on Tourism and Sustainability and on behalf of its members. In this role, Croatia will, together with Spain, also represent EU positions in the process of negotiating the United Nations resolution on sustainable tourism and the report of the promotion of sustainable tourism, including ecotourism for poverty eradication and environment protection, that will precede the resolution. The report and the resolution will be adopted by the UN General Assembly this year. Having this role legitimizes us
as well as open up the possibilities to present the special requirements of the tourism sector and how it deals with circularity. In its research on the 2019 baseline report on the integration of sustainable consumption and production patterns into tourism policies, UN WTO and UN Environment Programme analyzed over 100 policies around the world to assess sustainable consumption and production policy instruments in national tourism. This report suggests embracing innovative approach, particularly moving away from traditional value chain relation and adopting more systematic circular production and consumption patterns that accelerate the sector's sustainability. The important finding is a gap in most national tourism policies when it comes to measuring the impact of tourism. We can agree there is a great need to improve monitoring, sharing, and disclosing the sustainable development impacts on tourism, including environmental impacts. We, who come from an environmental background and invited to provide support to tourism on how to achieve this. On the other hand, international organizations have a mandate given to them by the member states to help affirm and promote tourism sustainability. UN organizations suggest some catalytic intervention to scale up and activate the private sector. Growing number of stakeholders involved demonstrates the success, in particular, of two of these interventions. Global Tourism Plastic Initiative provides a global framework for action to address the root causes of plastic pollution and is driving the tourism sector towards circular economy. The UN WTO Glasgow Declaration on Climate Action in Tourism encourages international community and private stakeholders to join the cause to further advance transformation along the entire tourism value chain. To conclude, I hope that the main outcome of this conference will be better understanding between circularity and tourism as a prerequisite for achievement sustainable and greener development. I add my best wishes for a successful and fruitful conference, and my thanks to all organizers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I confess that I made a small change to the agenda. Maybe I was attracted by the Balkan waves from Albania to Croatia, but and by tourism also. So I'm inviting you to come back to UNICE representatives, honorable representatives that are in the panel, and allow me to give the floor to Ms. Monica Lin, Principal Advisor and Chief Sustainable Development and Gender Unit of UNICE, to make presentation on the implementation of the commitments made under the initiative Batumi Action for Cleaner Air. To talk again about the greenhouse gases and the air.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, distinguished participants. It is my pleasure to give you an overview, PowerPoint presentation on the findings of the final report on the implementation of the Batumi Action for Cleaner Air, abbreviated as the BACA. And you will find all the details. Of course, I cannot go into every detail of this quite detailed report in the conference document number 7. But let me try to resume the most important findings of this report. As you know, the BACA was one of the initiatives at the Batumi conference with the objective to trigger voluntary additional commitments to fight air pollution. And there were a number of objectives of this initiative, which you see on the screen. There was a request for possible concrete actions by governments, but also organizations to address issues that were currently not being addressed, of course, to help the further implementation of the UNECE Long-Range Transboundary Air Pollution Convention, to broaden the stakeholders involved, to invite stakeholders to engage, and also for governments to voluntarily commit to implementing specific actions and share their successes and further challenges. Next slide, please. There were 110 voluntary commitments taken by 27 countries and 4 organizations. And there was reporting on the implementation of 88 of these 110 voluntary commitments. Next slide, please. These commitments can be grouped into 5 categories, which you see on the slide. So it's about monitoring activities and emissions inventories, then the establishment of national action programs that reduce air pollution, and about half of all the voluntary commitments made were in this category. Then improvement of public awareness, capacity building and technical support, and the policy domain. Next slide, please. Let's look a little bit more in detail at the commitments taken in these different categories that I have just mentioned to you. The first one is regarding monitoring activities and emissions inventories. 10 countries and 1 organizations made commitments in these areas. And this was in the area of monitoring, mostly about establishing, improving, extending monitoring networks. Next slide, please. On the emissions inventories, it was about the establishment of inventories, also about the improvement of existing inventories. I will not go into all the list of all the countries which you see on the slides and which you also find in the report for reasons of time constraints. Next slide, please. Then the establishment of national action programs that reduce air pollution. So the category with the most voluntary commitments made. There were commitments of a multi-sectoral character, but also in certain key sectors. Now, on the multi-sectoral strategies and policies, this regards national plans, programs, and strategies aimed at emission reductions that affect at the same time several key sectors, so bring improvements in several sectors. Next slide, please. One key sector, of course, when it comes to air pollution is the transport sector. And there we had quite a good number also of voluntary commitments made. And this regards, for instance, renovation of car fleets, promotion of cleaner electric vehicles, air quality certificates, green license plates, bus change programs, improvement of fuel quality standards, progress in road infrastructure for public transport, walking and cycling infrastructure improvements, then introduction of technical inspections that didn't exist before, or electronic taxation systems. And this shows you the very wide variety of commitments that were made. Next slide, please. Another key sector, industry and residential heating. There it was mostly about adopting new regulations aimed at reducing certain harmful emissions from paints, varnishes, vehicle refinishing materials, VOC emissions from petroleum refineries, but also addressing leakages, addressing fugitive emissions from equipment in the oil and natural gas sector, or in one case also launching a building energy efficiency program. So you see these are measures, I think, that are also of great importance when we look at the current energy challenges that we have in our region. Next slide, please. That's the improvement of public awareness. There were a number of countries that reported on awareness-raising campaigns, on national communication efforts, sometimes also on quite technical issues, like, for instance, the nitrogen cycle, the development of ambient air quality portals that provide data, And also, we as UNECE conducted awareness-raising activities on air pollution issues and the ongoing work under the Air Convention in the entire region. Next slide, please. Capacity building and technical support. This is, of course, of great importance for many countries in our region. But it can mean strengthening capacities in one's own country. Like, for instance, Austria reported progress in strengthening administrative capacity of national authorities, but then other countries and organizations reported on capacity building activities they support in other countries of the region. All countries working together with organizations to provide technical and policy advice. Or a group of countries like the Nordic Council of Ministers providing capacity building support. Next slide, please. The last category is in the policy sphere. There were 17 commitments. This was mostly strengthening norms and targets, ratification of some or the latest protocols to the Air Convention, which of course gives us particular pleasure as the Secretariat of this convention. Linking science and policy through workshop, or amending of existing laws on certain aspects of air pollution. Next slide, please. If we now look overall at the progress in the implementation of the commitments I just presented to you, the countries that reported, 75% said yes, commitments have been implemented. Then 22% said implementation is in progress, and then some said implemented, some in progress, and there was only, I think, 1% where implementation had not yet started. Next slide, please. There are always challenges and lessons learned, and this is also, I think, a very important aspect of this initiative, as this can also contribute to further improving, learning from each other, and also to coming up with perhaps addressing emerging challenges. I think the challenges and lessons learned, one can group them into categories of lack of financial and human resources. The biggest challenge identified was the high investments and the operational costs of modern air quality monitoring networks. Lack of data, poor coordination, and I think these are two issues, well, that are of concern not only when it comes to air pollution, it's in many areas of the SDGs where these issues are also valid. And then, of course, there were the challenges, different challenges caused by the COVID-19 pandemic that have already been mentioned also in earlier interventions here. Next slide, please. So, of course, the BACA does not end here. And countries and organizations reporting have outlined concrete steps for further follow-up and for future measures. Continuing efforts to reduce transport sector emissions, continue implementing further emission mitigation measures in the agriculture sector, further increase household sector energy efficiency, further extension of ambient air quality monitoring and assessment systems, additional steps to improve the accuracy of emission inventories, continue awareness-raising activities, capacity building, additional steps, more capacity building activities, plans to better coordinate air quality management and climate change adaptation activities. Of course, there are important linkages there. And continue work on the approval of national programs to control air pollutions. So, what can we conclude from all of this? Was the Batumi Action for Cleaner Air useful? Well, those countries who reported back, and also the organizations, found it useful or even very useful. We did not receive any negative feedback. And it was mentioned that it was useful to strengthen also political support related to improving air quality and protecting public health and ecosystems. Next slide, please. I've said in the beginning there were several objectives, with the overall objective, of course, to strengthen measures and policies against air pollution, a little bit in detail what objectives have been achieved. Well, the Batumi Action has provided governments and other stakeholders with a list of concrete actions to address air pollution at local, national, and regional levels. Action was inspired on air pollution issues that are currently not being addressed. The BACA has helped the further implementation of the Long-Range Transboundary Air Pollution Convention. It has invited stakeholders and gotten some additional stakeholders on board to support actions that improve air quality, in particular capacity building and technical assistance actions. And finally, yes, governments have shown their readiness to voluntarily commit to implementing specific actions and also shared their successes and further challenges. And they have also said that at future meetings of the CP and at future meetings of the convention, they are ready to continue these discussions and discuss further actions. And that can bring us to the conclusion that the initiative should continue. It should continue in our region, but it may also be a good example to be replicated in other regions beyond the UNECE region. That brings me to the end of my presentation, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very interesting. A lot of lessons learned and a long journey in the near future. Thank you, Mrs. Lin. And now we remain at the Batumi Initiative on Green Economy from Batumi through Nicosia, the progress of the Batumi Initiative on Green Economy at the Nicosia call. And allow me to give the floor to Mrs. Elizabeth Quintas da Silva, of Portugal, Chair of the UNECE Committee on Environmental Policy, to make presentation the Batumi Initiative on Green Economy from Batumi through Nicosia, the progress of the Batumi Initiative on Green Economy. Floor to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I will not follow exactly my presentation, but Nick Bonvaza, he's for sure will be able to see which slides I will skip. I will skip most of the slides because I think that what matters is that you understand why do we have this kind of initiatives and what is BE. In my case, I will explain BE, but BE is related to BACA. So the initiative that our dear colleague Monica Lin presented. So how did this start? This is an initiative which is not an usual initiative for UNECE if we go back to 2011. And I'm looking at Rafi, the US delegation, because all started with the US delegation. In the run-up to Astana, the US delegation suggested that the UNECE could adopt on the environmental side this kind of initiatives on which we, the countries or international organizations, could submit commitments. We would commit to certain actions, and that these voluntary commitments would complement the more harder instruments and initiatives and measures and programs that we had. And BACA was a real success. So as Monica referred to, there were commitments by many countries, by many organizations. When we felt that this was such a success, we decided to continue. When I say we, it's the Committee on Environmental Policy endorsed by the ministerial declarations. So we had BACA in Astana, and when we reached Batumi, we had to follow up on a decision of Astana, which was that the pan-European region should take the lead in the transition to a green economy. So we had to think of measures to allow us to take the lead. And we thought of a set of measures. We developed the Pan-European Strategic Framework for Greening the Economy, and we launched the Batumi Initiative on Green Economy, the BIGI, and BIGI does not mean big elephant. And we received many voluntary commitments again, and I will now jump to the slide which has the reference to the 123 commitments. In between, what we do with these initiatives, it's always open. So there is a database, and you can commit. If you did not commit now for the Nicosia call, you can commit in the coming days, in the coming months, in the coming years. And every 2 or 3 years, we assess how is the development of these initiatives, the actions, how is it going? Did you reach your aim? You did not, why? And we have discussions in events promoted by UNECE on the development, on the implementation of these actions. So for the BGE, we received 123 commitments from 27 countries and 13 lead organizations. You see lots of countries and organizations here. And when we assessed, when I say we, the UNECE as a whole, when we assessed what the results were, we saw that in terms of government actions, these were principally economic objectives. Environmental objectives were more complementary, but they are there. And legal, regulatory, policy instruments are used more often than economic and fiscal instruments, which means that the fiscal and economic instruments perhaps should be used more, but we know that it's difficult. And that the sectors in focus were energy, agriculture, and transport sectors. So when we were preparing for the conference of this week, with the strong support from Switzerland, we have to express our gratitude to Switzerland, because Switzerland has helped very much this initiative to be on the right track. We discussed again the possibility of opening a Nicosia call, a new call, and in this specific situation, this was not only about the 2 themes of the conference, although there is a focus in the 2 themes of the conference, but it was also about all the other areas, sector embedded in the green economy. And I would like now to go to the slide with the flags. We received significant commitments in a short period of time. These are, so we received 61 new commitments, 50 from governments, and we know that colleagues that are here, that countries and other organizations are still going to submit commitments. These commitments are more important than we could think of, because these commitments, they are good examples of actions, of measures, of initiatives that we could implement in our own countries. So we can learn from these commitments. And because I have to say that I invade the session that we had in the morning with environmental performance reviews, where everyone came to the podium to take a picture, I perhaps would suggest to Madam Chair, but I'm in your hands, that after you conclude, perhaps we could put the slide with the flags and all the contributors to the Nicosia call could come to the podium, and we could also take a picture with this beautiful slide behind us. But I would just show, Nick, if we could go to the provisional timeline of BGE. So this is what we have. You see the timeline, and this is what we have before us. In 2025, there will be a midterm review. We will assess the implementation of the commitments again. Then there will be a progress report. And in 2030, we will not turn into pumpkins, but there will be another midterm review, and probably in 2032, we will see whether or not it is relevant to continue with this initiative. But I'm sure that we have been so successful that this again is an initiative that we should continue to have in the coming future. And again, we have the slide with the flags, but I will give back the floor to you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mrs. Quintas da Silva. I'm taking your proposal, but maybe we can do it at the end of this plenary session. Yes, do you agree?
if you allow me, Madam Chair, I think that we are changing the scenario. I don't know exactly if we are changing the scenario.
Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
Do you agree? Yes, at the end, with the help of the technical group, we can put it again, the flags, and to be all proud to make the photo. Okay, thank you very much. And let me now open the floor for interventions. We have already two speeches. Mrs. Katrin Schöneberger, State Secretary for the Environment of Switzerland. I don't know if, yes, please, floor for you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, there are many challenges associated with the transition towards sustainable tourism, such as the lack of harmonized sustainability standards. In addition, the tourism value chain is broad, involving many different sectors. Moving towards more circularity in tourism operations requires, therefore, a cross-sectoral transformation. I would now like to address the guiding question of what initiatives have been introduced or planned in cooperation with tourism businesses and organizations in my country to establish circular tourism destinations. It allows me to showcase one of the 4 voluntary commitments that Switzerland will announce in Nicosia or has announced in Nicosia, the Swisstainable Program. In 2021, the first Swiss tourism destinations like the world-famous holiday, leisure and convention resort of Davos have committed to becoming climate-neutral destinations. In collaboration with universities and with financial public support from the Swiss Tourism Innovation Fund, the destinations are currently developing standards for monitoring their CO2 emissions. The Swisstainable Program has been launched in the same year. Businesses and organizations are assessed with regard to their engagement in sustainable development, and they are recognized with a Swisstainable label. While the Swisstainable label is currently exclusively used to recognize businesses and organizations, the program is now being adopted to allow for the labeling of entire destinations. Switzerland places a particular emphasis on destinations when dealing with sustainability in tourism. Destinations play a central role in implementing decisive measures to foster sustainability in tourism. This year, the annual event for the Tourism Forum Switzerland will be dedicated to tourism destinations. National and regional governmental institutions, academia, and the tourism industry itself will get together to discuss the importance of sustainability at the destination level. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Schöneberger. And another intervention now, remaining in the same topics about sustainable tourism from Ambassador Johanna Liesinger-Peitz of Sweden. Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm just kind of borrowing the microphone from our Swiss friends here. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Excellencies, distinguished delegations. The transition to green circular economy is crucial to move towards a low carbon emission society and to reach the 2030 agenda. I think our discussions here this week has really showed also the crucial importance and contributions by the UNECE to this goal. So let me take the opportunity to introduce to you from the Swedish side 4 new Nicosia Big E commitments, and I will try to be as brief as possible. Our first commitment is for sustainable tourism, and it's 2 different investment programs. One, until 2024, the Swedish Agency for Economic and Regional Growth run a program that provides support to develop the infrastructure for recreation and tourism in rural areas, directed towards hiking and mountain biking. The second commitment in this category is about a Council for Sustainable Cities, which is established with a mandate to contribute to the long-term development of sustainable cities. Here, the target group is the Council of Swedish Municipalities, and for them to provide capacity building and information on financing for sustainable urban development. Our third commitment is the Urban Environmental Agreements. The Swedish government support municipalities and regions to develop sustainable urban environment. This is by granting co-financing for municipal and regional investments in infrastructure that lead to increased share of public transport and cycling or sustainable freight transport. Our last commitment is in the introduction of a littering fee. Producers should take responsibility for the life cycle of their products. According to the polluter pays principle, Sweden has, as a part of the implementation of the EU Single-Use Plastic Directive, implemented a littering fee for products of single-use plastic. Certain products, for example, plastic cup, plastic bottles, tobacco products with filters, are therefore subject to a littering fee. We are all aware that significant amount of single-use plastic is used in the tourism industry, as well as for daily consumption of food and beverage. By introducing the littering fee, we are taking steps to improve sustainability in the hospitality and restaurant sector, and encouraging also circularity in material use. So with this, with this presentation of our Nicosia commitments, we hope to contribute to the process, to also circular economy in these sectors, and we hope to inspire the others to follow. I thank you.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. We started talking about sustainable tourism, air pollution, circular economy, but talking about tourism, we have an important international organization, which is the World Tourism Organization, and the Secretary General of United Nations World Tourist Organization was not able to attend the conference. So Mr. Pololikashvili, he addressed to us as a key global player in this sector, a pre-recorded message, video. So I'm inviting you to follow this message in the video stream.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, good afternoon. The pandemic has given us a chance to rethink tourism. We are grateful to the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe and to ministers present here today for focusing on this important and timely topic. For businesses, the circular economy can bring competitive advantages. For destinations, it can build more inclusive local value chains. And for tourists, it's an opportunity to leave a positive footprint. In 2021, we launched the Glasgow Declaration on Climate Action in Tourism COP26. Within the EU transition pathway, the Glasgow Declaration is now included within the initiatives that can support a co-implementation process. However, the circular economy is not among the competences of ministers of tourism. Today, ministries of the environment from the pan-European region are well represented. Encourage you to build synergies with our counterparts in ministries of tourism to implement the circular economy in the tourism sector. At UNWTO, we are working closely with UNEP to advance initiatives such as the Global Tourist Plastic Initiative, which are based on circularity. And we remain committed to support our member states in the integration of circularity in tourism operations. I wish you the productive discussion and look forward to our continued collaboration. Thank you.
I want to thank you in distance, the Secretary General, but I have a first solution for what Mr. Pololikashvili is addressing to the ministers. The solution is, for example, the Albanian solution, having in the same ministry tourism and environment, the best check and balance between the two sectors. So could be a first solution, which is functioning in a small country as Albania with big attraction in tourism and declaring since the 1st June of this year the prohibition of the single-use plastic bags. So you see, it is possible. Thank you very much. Let me to thank all my colleagues and friends in this panel for the intervention. And we are at the end of this plenary session for the item 6, circular economy and sustainable tourism. So this is the moment now to split into a round table. But before do it, we have to make, yes, in Albania, when we are giving the promises, we maintain it. It's important for us. It's part of our code. So let's make this photo with all the representatives of the flags that we had on the banner. Is it possible? And after that, we can split in 2 round table. I like the mess.
We still have speeches.
We have still speech. Okay, oh, sorry.
So we can postpone the flags. Maybe?
We can postpone the flags or do it now. Elisabetta?
The flags.
Can I just need to understand if the interventions are on Bigi and Baka or if they are not?
No, they are.
After four interventions. Let's do it after 4 interventions. Okay, thank you. So I will continue to give the floor to Mr. Michal Pastwiński, Director of the International Relations Department of the Ministry of Environment, Czech Republic. Yes?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Pastwiński is here?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Please.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me make a statement on behalf of European Union and its member states to this topic which has been discussed concerning circular economy and tourism. As the disruption caused by the epidemic of COVID-19 clearly showed, tourism is an extremely important part of global economy. 4% of the world GDP, 3rd largest export category after fuels and chemicals, with a record 1.5 billion arrivals in 2019. It is a source of livelihood for millions around the globe. Without the many businesses around tourism, we would not be able to get to know beautiful places like Cyprus with some of the oldest water wells in the world, or the well-preserved Neolithic village of Kyrokitia, if I pronounce it correctly. At the same time, it needs to be acknowledged that the environmental impacts of tourism, as most of us probably can attest with our own experience, is enormous. Very often, while traveling to vacations, we find ourselves caught off guard in unsustainable solutions, drinking water from tiny plastic bottles and eating with plastic cutlery, seeing the impacts just around the corner of our holiday apartment, where rubbish bins are overflowing with mixed waste. So among the main problems of the tourism industry belong issues such as waste generation, energy and water consumption, and pollution of air and water, with bleak outlooks in each of these sectors. As the background document states, from energy consumption perspective, a significant climate change factor, we can expect increase in consumption by 154% by 2050, with impacts in many other relevant sectors. Not surprisingly, many of us are turning to greener or more sustainable solutions, with staggering 83% of travelers considering sustainable travel as a crucial. This represents a huge opportunity for businesses that could tap into sustainable finance, as circularity is becoming more and more a prerequisite for accessing financial support. And it is encouraging to see that sustainability is taking root in many businesses, branches in tourism and government's policies. Initiatives like, for example, EU Ecolabel for tourist accommodation, the European Tourism Indicator System for Sustainable Destination Management, or applications like the Marine Debris Tracker give those 83% of travelers hope that it is possible to travel and live within Earth's limits. The actions of business must go hand in hand with government's policies that incentivize sustainability. Of course, there are significant gaps as to the knowledge about what it means for the hotel owners, travel agencies, and local transport companies to be sustainable and what indicators to use. To make matters even more complex, while single businesses can try as hard as they can to embrace sustainability, it is difficult to convince the ecosystem they operate in to join this transition. So where do we go from this? I'm sure that you all remember the picture of seasides full of plastic waste that made headlines around the world. It indirectly concerned tourism and the campaign that spilled over from the global to national and regional levels and spurred worldwide action. This has led, among others, to the adoption of UN resolution, paving the way for an international treaty on plastic pollution to be negotiated by 2024. The Global Tourism Plastic Initiative has been promoting circular solutions and preparing the tourism industry for the regulatory changes that will certainly be induced by the new treaty on plastic pollution, and we call all tourism industry stakeholders to join efforts within the framework of this initiative and to effectively contribute to tackling plastic pollution. We are also calling governments to endorse the Glasgow Declaration on Climate Action in Tourism that supports tourism sector in meeting Paris Agreement targets. The governments must, as the background document clearly states, play a more active role in not only promoting sustainability in tourism, but also focus on raising awareness about this issue and so strive to change behavior of travelers. Only through close cooperation between governments, businesses, and academia, it is possible to make the needed shift to enable us all to enjoy the many fascinating attractions around the world without endangering them. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Pazbinski. And now the floor for Ms. Rodzica Karafilova-Blagova, Minister of Environment and Water of Bulgaria. Floor for you, my colleague.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to participate in 9th Environment for Europe Ministerial Conference, which marked 30 years of environmental cooperation in the pan-European region. It's extremely important for us that the process which began in Dobrich in 1991 continue the development and a rapid pace, and we already have concrete results. The transition to circular and resource-efficient economic models is a shortcut both to achieving sustainable and continuous growth and to improving competitiveness, and also for overcoming a number of challenges in the field of environmental protection. The introduction of a circular economy model in tourism is one of particular importance for the sector to respond to the social, economic, and environmental challenges it faces today, globally and especially the increasing pressure on natural resources and ecosystems that the threat of climate change. In order to realize the potential of the circular economy in tourism, it is necessary, first of all, to promote the introduction of integrated products and technological solutions and business practices, as well as sustainable value chains that ensure economically efficient and environmentally friendly utilization of the resources, energy, and waste. For this purpose, the establishing of a market and a regulatory environment favorable to the circular economy is a key. In this vein, the effort should be aimed at introducing common standards and criteria and the exchange of information and good practices regarding the quality, characteristics, and applicability of the tourism services. This approach should also be adequately reflected in the product policy of the countries through tools such as labeling to provide the consumer with clear and reliable information about the circularity. The transition to circular economy models, including in tourism, require a change all along the value chain. Here we come to the important role of the innovative products, services, and technologies. Our priority should be to provide support on the one hand for building the necessary scientific and innovation infrastructure, which will give a new impetus to the cooperation between science, education, and businesses. On the other hand, to support the market realization of innovative solutions by supporting access to financing, mobilization of private capital through innovative financial instruments, and the guarantee of high-risk investments. With regard to the policies and practices in Bulgaria to promote the green, circular, and resource efficiency tourism models, should be mentioned the regulatory and economic instruments which are in place for promoting investments in modern facilities for waste recovery through recycling, reuse, and extraction of secondary raw materials and energy. These tools are crucial for the circularity in the tourism industry because the availability of complete, integrated, and state-of-the-art waste management infrastructure and equipment is a need. Within the framework of various financial instruments, such as the operational program, the financial mechanism of the European Economic Area, and through the recovery mechanism, support is provided for the tourism sector, including small and medium-sized enterprises. Such support is provided for development, implementation, and certification of quality management systems, environmental protection, eco-label, energy management systems, information security, and other international, European, and national standards. Last but not least, we must not forget that the healthy and resilient ecosystem and the protection and evaluation of the natural capital are key factors for the development of the sustainable and resource-efficient tourism. Funding workable solutions for ecosystem services in the tourism sector will be the key factors that will accelerate the whole process of integrated value of the ecosystem service in the context of strategic planning as well as the business level. In the process of implementation under the financial mechanism of the European Economic Area is a project aimed at integration of ecosystem services in national planning, accounting, and reporting. As a result of the project, a valuation system for all Bulgarian ecosystem will be developed. The targeted sector by the project is namely the tourism. In conclusion, I would like to underline once again that the circular economy offers a new paradigm and a set of tools to guide an innovative, balanced, and resilient tourism industry. I believe that through open dialogue, we'll find the best solution for achieving the green and sustainable future. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, dear Minister. And now I'm giving the floor to the member of the Parliament of Cyprus, Mrs. Alexandra Atalides.
Thank you, President. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The pandemic confirmed that we must rethink how we live, how and what we consume, and that our choices will impact the lives of future generations. It has also revealed how human activity can disturb ecosystems and how vulnerable we are when faced with the consequences of our actions. COVID-19 paralyzed the tourist sector, putting at least 6 million jobs at risk in the European Union. Cyprus is a service-based economy, and although the importance of the tourism industry is fully acknowledged, it is clear that we need urgently to fully integrate integrated into European and national development plans to enhance the quality of its offer to make it more sustainable. The question is, what is the environmental impact of the sector? We don't know. Applying circular economy principles in the tourist sector is necessary in order to face the climate and environmental crisis, a crisis which not only destroys the planet, but it also deconstructs national economies built on the short-term profit arising from the overexploitation of natural resources. Unfortunately, our record is not so good. We overdeveloped and destroyed most of our country's beautiful coastal landscape with our planned and mostly unregulated development, violating local plans and environmental legislation. Our product lost its value over the years, and this is reflected in the increasing number of arrivals and the decreasing per head spending. We overstretch scarce resources as water for less and less economic benefit. The absence of efficient public transport is a drawback for the tourist industry because it means streets full of cars, increased emissions, which added together with the emissions produced by a fossil fuels-based electricity industry, burdens the tourist industry and, of course, the households. Today, most of the food and goods used for the industry are imported. Aged tourism infrastructure urgently requires an energy efficiency overhaul and extensive renovation to meet climate challenges. We need a comprehensive strategy for a sustainable tourism aligned with the Green Deal of the European Union and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. To maintain Cyprus as a leading destination, we must reinvent the industry based on sustainable principles, starting with the use and reuse of water, the production and consumption of food to the benefit of local producers, reduce the emissions footprint of the food consumption, ban plastic, return to traditional materials that can be easily renovated, reused, and recycled. We import products of zero aesthetical value and sell them as Cypriot souvenirs instead of supporting local crafts and art sectors that will employ hundreds of people. Locals can serve tourism sustainability by staying in their villages and produce quality products. Providing incentives to promote local products lays the foundation for a low-carbon tourist economic activity. Low greenhouse gas emissions must be maintained after consumption in the sorting and management of discarded products, which is among the main challenges we face as a country, but also the hotel industry in Cyprus. We must encourage the development of local enterprise networks with the involvement of all stakeholders and local communities. And I have to say that in conferences like this, I expect that we have a lot of NGOs to intervene because I think that we should listen to the citizens on the ground. And we have one organization like this, as Cyprus Sustainable Tourism Initiative. Climate change and the degradation of the environment can only be addressed by communities that employ sustainable practices and alternative forms of tourism, such as cultural and wildlife, agrotourism, ecotourism, and other experiences that respect the environment and the local cultural heritage while avoiding over-tourism. The misconception that our tourist product can and should be adapted to demand leads to its degradation and ultimately its destruction. What we need is to marginalize financial interests that come, develop, destroy, and depart for the next tourist development of a virgin and unspoiled destination. This is our country, and we have to preserve it for the next generations as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. you were talking about the NGOs. We have even in the plenary session one NGOs in the program, but in the 2 round tables after, other NGOs will participate on the debate. So thank you very much. And now I have the pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Ruslan Strilets, the Minister of Environmental Protection and Natural Resources of Ukraine.
Thank you, dear Chair. I'm very glad to have a speech one more time. Now I will say about our national park and with the situation with our tourism. So Ukrainian soldiers on the front line have a joke about green tourism. They say, when we win this war, for God's sake, don't invite us to go camping. Our soldiers defend Ukraine and the entire civilized world, spending a lot of time in the forest. That is where the most of the fighting taking place. Our nature is our reliable ally against Russian aggression. Nature helps to fight, but also suffers colossal damage. As of now, 20% of nature-protected areas of Ukraine have been affected by the war. Almost 3 million hectares of the Emerald Network are at risk. 8 reserves and 10 national parks are occupied. 16 Ramsar sites with an area of 600,000 hectares are under the threat of destruction. For example, there is the Holy Mountain National Park in Ukraine. 80% of this national park has been affected by military actions. We lost access to the Priazovsky National Park, the second largest in Ukraine. The lands that once were a travel destination for Herodotus have turned into a military base for the invaders. We lost access to Zhiralgach National Park, famous for being Europe's largest uninhabited island. Now its territory is contaminated with mines. There is no access to the famous Oleshki Sands, a small Sahara desert in the center of Europe. Before the Russian invasion, this place attracted tourists from all over the world. Hostilities take place in the Ivory Coast of Sviatoslav National Nature Park in the Mykolaiv region. This park has been named after Prince Sviatoslav, an ancestor of many European royal dynasties. There is a beautiful story that once upon a time, on his way from a military campaign, Prince Sviatoslav liked this region so much that he stayed there for the winter to admire the snow-white sands, lakes, and lagoons. As of now, about 7% of Ukraine's territory is designated as protected area. Also, Ukraine has a significant total area. We strive to reach the European level of protected area coverage. In the nearest future, our parliament will adopt a draft law about Emerald Network. We are establishing a separate state agency to manage our National Reserve Fund. This agency will not deal only with the preservation of our nature. It will make unique touristical products too. I'm sure many of you have wondered, how was Ukraine able to stand up to a state occupying a sixth of the Earth's landmass? We are already doing our best so that you can visit Ukraine and get your answers. We are creating our unique tourist products called the Emerald Way of Ukraine. This is a network of natural reserves, national parks, and sightseeings united by a single infrastructure. Ukraine is not a country for a one-day visit. And now we are doing everything to make sure that after our victory, it will be convenient and interesting for you to explore the country that fought for a peaceful sky in Europe. Ukraine's environmental strategy says about 15% of our territory to be designated as protected area by 2030. Because of Russian invasion, we will have to put much more effort with arms in our hands to win back our nature from the Russians, who burn all living things in their path. And if they don't burn, they cut down relict forest for firewood. I am grateful to my European colleagues who help us preserve our nature heritage. Recently, the team of my Lithuanian colleagues, Simonas Gentvilas, visited Ukraine. Lithuania took patronage over the Ukrainian National Park Radzivilas forest. This land were once owned by the Ukrainian-Lithuanian noble family of Radzivilas. This is a part of our common history and an honorable response to the enemy's blackmailing. This is especially valuable in time of war. We in Ukraine appreciate your trust and your support. It helps us to hold our weapons even more confidently. Being afraid of Russia and rejecting progress means staying on the sidelines of history. I invite you allies to join our efforts in protecting nature in the heart of Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear colleague, for your special speech, but also for sharing with us this extraordinary situation that just 1 year ago, 2 years ago, we couldn't imagine. This is also the dark side and the tragic side, we said, of a war regarding the nature, which is another victim apart the human beings. And thank you also for inviting us to visit Ukraine after the war. For sure you will have a victory. Thank you very much. Now, I will continue with the program, give the floor to Mrs. Christine Rotleder, the State Secretary of the Federal Ministry for the Environment, Nature Conservation, Nuclear Safety and Consumer Protection of Germany.
Thank you very much. Circular economy and mobility are key levers for sustainable tourism that's in harmony with nature and landscapes. To lower resource consumption with circular economy, we have to close material circles. For the tourism sector in particular, this means preventing waste. That includes, for instance, separating and recycling waste in hotels and holiday resorts. Closely linked to this are reusable alternatives. The European Union is already on a very good track in this regard. In order to meet EU targets for reducing certain disposable plastic products, restaurants, bistros and cafes in Germany that sell foods and drinks to go will also have to offer reusable packaging for their products from 2023. Single-use packaging will still be allowed, but reusable alternatives must be offered. The second key lever for reducing emissions in the tourism sector is mobility. In Germany, transport accounts for almost half of tourism-related greenhouse gas emissions. Cars are still the mode of transport used most often by holidaymakers, with 55%, according to the 2022 travel analysis, followed by planes at 34%. The share of holidaymakers traveling by train is very low at only 6% and bus at only 4%. Our goal is therefore to make holiday travel more environmentally friendly by expanding train services. Of course, rail travel is only an attractive option if people can also get around easily without a car at their holiday destination. Therefore, it's important to have good local public transport, but also, for instance, bikes offered through bike sharing services. In aviation too, we have to make adjustments to make flying more environmentally compatible. Cyprus, for example, we can only reach by plane. This means, for example, more efficient planes and more direct flights. Looking at the long term, we also have to come away from fossil kerosene. Power to liquid is an alternative that can make unavoidable air travel more climate friendly. However, this option is only, could you switch off your phone? Thank you. This option is only environmentally compatible if additional renewable electricity is used for production. If we truly want to massively reduce tourism's ecological footprint, we need a lot more than just individual projects. Mobility has to be made significantly more climate friendly, and every hotel, every provider should make their services sustainable from the start to finish. And this, I say also to our own country. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. And before to give the floor to the three last speakers, let me remind to save a little bit our time and not be longer more than three minutes, if you allow me. I have the pleasure to give the floor now to Mr. Petros Varilidis, Secretary General of Natural Environment and Water of the Hellenic Ministry of Environment and Energy of Greece. Floor to you.
Thank you very much, and apologies for the phone of my colleague ringing. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, sustainable tourism is at the heart of our national agenda. Tourism contributes more than 20% of our GDP and more than 20% of our employment. So it's practically the backbone of our economy. However, the seasonality of tourism creates problems and creates overcrowding in many areas, especially some islands that are famous, but because they're famous, they collect too many people. So obviously that causes irreversible damage to the groundwater aquifers, because we get seawater into the aquifers, so we have the phenomenon of salinization. Increases the need for wastewater treatment facilities that it's not easy to operate because of the fluctuations of the load. And of course, overstresses waste treatment facilities. So to deal with these issues, apart from the horizontal action plan for circular economy that deals with the general issue of circularity in our economy, we have also adopted some very specific measures. For example, to name a few, we promote the reuse of treated wastewaters through the environmental permitting procedure of hotels. Another example, we oblige all hotels with more than 100 beds and all restaurants with more than 100 seats to separately collect paper, plastic, metal, and glass packaging. And on top of that, to separately, for the hotels, to separately collect plastic waste in every single room. So furthermore, from 2023, there's also the additional obligation to separately collect their bio-waste and see to their transportation to compost plant. So even if the municipality doesn't have, hasn't set up a system to collect the bio-waste separately, they have to transport themselves the bio-waste to a compost treatment facility. other important steps towards circular and sustainable tourism. First, the development of ESG criteria, indices, and best practices for tourism, as well the obligation in our first climate law to measure the carbon footprint every year. Second, the development of a national strategic plan for sustainable tourism to promote water and energy savings, recycling, and ecotourism, especially in small islands and nature-protected areas, mostly in Natura 2000 sites. In this context, we have also secured more than 200 million euros for the construction and maintenance of hiking trails and the conservation of traditional terraces in steep slopes through the RRF fund. Third, the establishment of a national observatory for sustainable tourism. Fourth, the Untrodden Mountains initiative that Minister Amiras referred to it this morning. Fifth, the 1,000 Unspoiled Beaches initiative, where no permanent constructions or temporary installations of any type are allowed. Sixth, the conversion of our islands to innovation labs by, among others, promoting circular approaches to water and waste management with projects such as the Just Go Zero Tilos, a small remote Greek island in the Dodecanese complex, to serve as a model for other small islands. Our policies and measures aim at converting nature protection to a key driver for green and inclusive growth, meaningfully supporting local communities' transition to sustainability. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And the floor goes now to Deputy Minister of Environment of Armenia, Mrs. Gabrielian. I have only the name, the last name.
Thank you very much. My name is Gaane.
Please.
Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues, once again for giving me the floor. I will try to to manage my time in 3 minutes. There is a widespread I'm sorry, because you have mixed the agenda, so I'm trying just to get, I used to be the last one, but it's okay, sorry for recognition that green agenda is becoming essential and have to play a central role in alleviating the multiplied demands on sustainable environmental management and tackling climate change. The thematic track is oriented towards pursuing smart and sustainable practices, as well as diversification in the tourism sector. The past 2 decades have seen rapidly growing and global interest in sustainable tourism, and we have already talked about it a lot. This new focus on sustainability is driving changes in both product development and tourism marketing and promotion. Private sector participation in sustainable tourism may occur in a wide array of activities. Among those with significant experience in private participation is in particular environmental protection. Particularly, this is a triangle with its specific role for each one of them, like government, community and private sector, and mainly the SMEs. As a big touristic companies forced within the context of green wave, while the small ones and medium sizes and are not capable and need initial support and consultancy from the government, at least at the level of identification and prioritization of the field. In this regard, the private sector is also ready for the reprofiling to sustainable tourism production. This is very important for Armenia because when we are talking about green agenda, this is very important to understand. Do the private sector is ready for green agenda? Because it is one side when the public sector is ready for green agenda, for implementation, the green strategy, and now we are in the process of implementation the green strategy. But do the private sector is ready for this restructuring? Because we are talking about green procurement and implementation it with Ministry of Finance. But we now are thinking about, we need to go to dialogue, to open dialogue with private sector. Do they ready for this green procurement, for this green investment, green production? Because this is very important, not to be our strategies just laid on the table. At the end of the day, we need to implement this green agenda into production, into this cycling, into this procedure of producing these goods, services, and construction, and for sure for tourism. But I think there is several things and initiatives that government has already pushed up. And they are like the e-mobilities and this ecotourism idea. And in this regard, in Armenia, the tourism part for SMEs has really active. So they like the idea of ecotourism because it is like supply and demand. So they do like to work on that. The continuing effective implementation of resource efficient and cleaner production. And we have already institutionally, 14 SMEs in plastic, fisheries, and other production sectors are involved in these activities. And this is something that must be continuously, because now we are talking about the secondary use of water, the closed water using, and the private sector also want to be involved. I think mostly they don't know how to do it, because there was a session about this is not only about what we need to do, we need to provide how we need to do these things. The economic analysis of deposit revenue system of packaging waste is also done in Armenia, with the all recommendation of EPR and DRS project. Ministry of Environment will start with the development of a roadmap of activities and step by step launch the implementation of EPR production process. And finally, there are several steps that introduction of highly efficient system of management for effective use and improvement of quality water resource, sustainable management of forests, conservation of biodiversity, development of policy on ambient air maintenance, development and implementation of policy aimed at promotion the long-term goal for green economy and sustainable development, ensuring gradual reduction and limitation of the use of these possible polyethylene products. But in the end, I just want to say, because we are so much talks in this green agenda, and this is very important, this is also something that move NGOs, because we have also representative from NGOs, continuing your idea that we have also representative for NGOs, because in this field, NGOs is really active and they pushing government and pushing communities and municipalities to think green. This is the idea of open dialogue between government, between municipalities, and between NGOs and private sector. I think this is very important to come together and to work again and again and to have this green thinking and these goals. Thank you very much for this very important and great session of circular tourism. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm taking your last sentences, of course. No strategy, no green agenda without the private sector, without the civil society. We cannot have only as governments our own strategy without them. There are social, all inclusive. Thank you very much. And now the very last speaker of this plenary session, it will be exactly from the civil society, Olga Purnizova from European Eco Forum.
Спасибо, госпожа председатель. Европейский экофорум приветствует акцент в работе по интеграции принципов циркулярной экономики в сферу туризма. Здесь хотелось бы отметить несколько акцентов. Первое. Мы считаем, что очень важно активизировать работу по загрязнению пластиком, связанную с туристической сферой. Такая работа, кроме всего прочего, Также будет способствовать ранней реализации нового договора по пластику, работа по которому недавно началась. Второе. Особое внимание следует уделить горным регионам, где туризм также активно развивается.
We have developed a great deal in this area, particularly on pollution, notably with plastics. This is a problem which is very topical for Central Asia. Third, civil society and NGOs must play a larger role in managing waste, in reducing the consumption of resources, rejecting single-use plastic, adopting renewable energy sources, and in other areas of the circular economy. NGOs should be included more broadly in sustainable tourism initiatives with broader cooperation with experts, the tourism community, business circles, other interested parties, and of course expanding dialogue with government agencies of all levels. And here we would like to second the statement by Armenia to say that it is indeed extremely important that work is done with small and medium-sized enterprise. Fourth, we believe it's extremely important to ensure an exchange of experience and better tools, working methods in the UNECE region. Already, a large amount of useful experience has been accumulated, notably thanks to the work of UNEP and other international organizations. However, these new developments and tools have not reached all countries, and in some regions, the issues related to the circular economy are facing major problems and tension, and a great deal still needs to be done on the local and regional level. Also, the Eco Forum has also made its own contribution as a part of the Big E, and my colleague will tell you more about that at roundtables. I managed to finish that in a quick 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, you have respected the 3 minutes time of speaking. We are at the end of our plenary session, and promise is promise. So now is the moment for the family photos, representative of the flags. Who can we have the photos, please? This is not the photo with the flags. Yes, here we are. So please, representative from the countries who are already on the photos.
The flags, I think.
Yeah. Here I am, the first flag is Albania.
We go over there.
So indeed, delegations who recognize your flags, please, for the family photo over there. Yes, and meanwhile, about the round tables. Portugal to the podium, please. And also the organizations who are listed there, please. Meanwhile, about the roundtables, the same as in the morning, you'll see after this family photo on the screen, the split of countries who will stay in this room, Zenon, and who will go to another room, Elia. Please pay attention, and then you'll be in the good hands of our moderators. Thank you. Sorry, there is no sound at the round table. Could somebody help, please?
Distinguished colleagues, welcome to our roundtable number 1 on applying principles of circular economy to sustainable tourism. Let me invite all the delegates to continue the insightful and rich discussion that we had in plenary. I believe that there are quite a number of initiatives that we can continue to share and to try to dive a little bit deeper. So I invite all of you to identify your seat in the table. If you don't find a seat with your nameplate, we can definitely help you get one. My name is Jorge Laguna Celis. I am the head of the United Nations program on sustainable consumption and production. Our initiative, it's hosted, it's serviced, it's enabled by the United Nations Environment Program. We were established in 2012, as a matter of fact, by the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, Rio +20. Furthermore, in 2015, the heads of state, in adopting the Sustainable Development Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, consecrated and positioned sustainable consumption and production as one of the SDGs and encouraged member states to implement this framework, the 10-year framework of programs on sustainable consumption and production. Everything that we do, that we advance, that we deliver and implement, it serves one purpose. It's to change the way we think, the way we act, and we inspire on sustainable consumption and production and circularity. We do so by integrating SCP into the main frameworks that advance actions to tackle the triple planetary crisis, whether this is on the climate agenda, on the nature and biodiversity agenda, on the pollution agenda, or on the trade agenda. We support, and today, and as a matter of fact, we have heard some very interesting stories on how are we supporting countries and stakeholders, destinations or industries advance towards low carbon circular patterns. And we do so by 6 global partnerships and initiatives. Today, we celebrate one of these global partnerships and initiatives, that it is the Global Tourism Plastic Initiative under the One Planet Network's Sustainable Tourism Program. And this is the reason and the purpose why myself and my wonderful co-moderator that is sitting here with me already taking notes and getting ready, we are here today to facilitate the dialogue together with Mr. Professor Dirk Glaser, doctor, and probably also Professor Dirk Glaser, who is the director of the Sustainable Development Division on Tourism of the United Nations World Tourism Organization. So UNEP and the UN World Tourism Organization, we are the, I would say, custodians, the secretariat, the enablers of the United Nations Sustainable Tourism Program under the NYFP. This is an important partnership, and you will hear a bit more about it today. And this is the purpose of why we want to have this conversation with you, and we're facilitating it. So, but in addition to sustainable tourism, we're working on other high-impact sectors, and this is an element by which we have been inspired of the discussions, and as a matter of fact, of the broader forum today. Today we have been, and yesterday, as a matter of fact, discussing on a number of angles that bring the element of interministerial coordination. In the first day, you will recall, we heard the perspective from the stakeholders of education and ministers of education that contributed from their perspective to the goals and aims of this important 9th Environmental Conference for Europe. Today in the morning, and also in the documents and reports that have been presented for your consideration, we have brought the perspective of the ministries of infrastructure and understanding how important, how central it is to work with nature, not against. And in the debate that we have followed on sustainable tourism in the plenary, we have understood how important it is that understanding, appreciating, and acting on a tourism sector that it's working with other high-impact sectors to achieve two goals: to reduce the environmental impacts, but also to trigger change in our economies and in our societies. We have heard wonderful, inspiring examples, initiatives, and commitments from quite a number of countries from the UNECE region. Today, in this dialogue that we want to make very interactive, we have the opportunity to go further and dig deeper, perhaps, in one of the key recommendations that the background document that has been prepared for this ministerial conference by the Secretariat, the UNECE, with whom we implement a number of actions and initiatives in the pan-European region in promoting circularity, some of the key recommendations that we can pick up and take forward out of just to initiate the dialogue and to trigger discussions and to help kickstart our deliberations. Some of these main findings are the following. The first one, it is the call to act. We need to identify, and as a matter of fact, we can hear today about alignment of policies and investments. I invite you also, and we, as a matter of fact, are calling upon to share with us recommendations on how can we increase sustainable finance that helps. We heard it from a number of participants already in the earlier sessions, the small and medium enterprises, tourism operators, communities, localities, destinations, in implement SCP policies. There is also a need to promote greater coordination amongst ministries, better measurements and better indicators. As a matter of fact, there is not at this stage one single approach and model on how, on what does it mean a sustainable tourism and circular tourism sector. We have identified a number of areas, but the paper makes reference to defining harmonized standards, harmonized methodologies, harmonized measurement initiatives that help us compare performance, but also appreciate and understand that the sustainable tourism let's say, component or the circularity within the tourism sector can be measured by indicators that can help us move towards comparability. So a number of areas, a number of points for discussion today. So with these introductory remarks, myself and my wonderful co-moderator, we want to invite you to please raise your flag or your identifier so that we can call upon you, and we will be promoting and trying to engage as much as possible an interactive discussion. I have now the privilege to hand the floor to my distinguished co-moderator, Dr. Dirk Laser, who will handle the first segment of this discussion. Over to you, Dirk.
Jorge, thank you very much for this introduction and framing the objectives of the discussion here. From UNWTO's point of view, let me express here our gratitude to be at the meeting and co-moderating with you, Jorge, and UNEP and the One Planet Secretariat this session. Circularity for us in tourism is important for us. It is important to be here and to demonstrate also our interest as ministries of tourism. The Secretary General was voicing that before. We wish to combine the competencies between the two ministries, the two areas, which usually are existing at governmental level. Not everybody has, as the presidency was mentioning before, the privilege to unite these two portfolios in the same ministry. So when this is not the fact, and that is not necessarily the fact at national level and less even at destination level, then cooperation is key to success between public sector and the private sector. But I think, Jorge, we should right now listen to the contributions of those delegations here present in the room wishing to take the floor. We have, according to the Secretariat over here, some expressed wishes.
No. List of countries present.
It's the list of countries present here, right? May I ask you, also for the sake of not making the moderators speak the whole time, and rather going back into their roles of moderators, express your wish to share your visions? There we have an icebreaker. Thank you very much. This is?
Austria.
Austria. Thank you very much. Bitte sehr.
Thank you, Chair. And I think the whole world knows how important tourism is for Austria. And 8% of the GDP comes from tourism. And therefore, I would like to give you some examples on international level as well as on national levels, some examples. Regarding the promotion of circular tourism models at the intergovernmental level, Austria is the founder and the active member of the PAP. It's the Partnership on Sustainable Tourism Mobility. Then on a national level, the priority and objective of Austria is to make tourism more sustainable and contribute to reaching the Sustainable Development Goals, as you mentioned. Our national tourism strategy, the Master Plan for Tourism, is the guiding document for our tourism policy. A sustainability in all dimensions and a culture of cooperation with all public and private stakeholders are central considerations. We need tourism destinations to remain living environment equally attractive to the local population and our guests. Furthermore, Austria has introduced an eco-level for destinations. It's a new level based on a recognized international indicator systems, which will help destinations in their green transition. Furthermore, new funding guidelines to support small and medium-sized enterprises are being developed and present in the ministry responsible for tourism, which are focused on sustainability and resilience. A sustainability bonus is planned. The building of more attractive staff housing will be encouraged, as well as investments in regions with local added value. It is also planned that there will be no more funding available for soul-sealing tourism-intensive municipalities. There is also a regular and intense exchange on sustainable mobility in tourism. This is very important in Austria. And there's a good cooperation between our ministry, the Ministry for Climate Change, and the ministry responsible for tourism. And therefore, also many projects at the destination level for the enhanced use of public transport in tourism has been installed. In the view of energy crisis, the Austrian ministry responsible for tourism is currently revising its handbook for energy efficiency in tourism for Austrian tourism enterprises. And as you called, Mr. Chairman, indicators are very, very important. To measure the impact of tourism, Austria uses a set of indicators covering all three dimensions of sustainability. Ecological indicators currently used are the share of renewable energy sources in tourism enterprises and the energy consumption per overnight stay. The socio-cultural dimension is covered by data on employment, guest satisfaction, and the tourism acceptance of the population. And finally, we are constantly working on the extension of indicators to get a clearer picture of the sustainability of Austrian tourism. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this contribution, Austria. If I may to reflect on the importance of indicators, bring maybe to the attention of the other delegates that Austria also within UNWTO is leading the measuring and dimensions discussion. Austria over there had the chair over the past years of the Statistic Commission in UNWTO. As we were putting that into the background document of this conference also, there's a major initiative ongoing. For those not aware of how tourism dimensions are classically measured, classically it was a purely economic measurement, very often focused on two dimensions, arrivals and receipts. That was in the past then expanded to also measure the direct, indirect, and induced impacts in economic dimensions and on labor in the tourism sector. And for about 6 years, together with the chairmanship of Austria, there was the initiative promoted, developed, and will be brought to the attention of the Statistic Commission and adopted over there as a UN standard of measuring sustainable tourism. It is an approach to measure sustainability from a national perspective. And therefore, if you may elaborate on your direct experiences on measuring at subnational level, I would be very interested if you have something to say on that. But basically to say this is a complex undertaking. The advances, as Jorge mentioned that before, are crucial because if we cannot measure, we cannot manage. That's what we say in the tourism sector right now as a daily mantra. And if the delegate of Austria would like to take the floor and sharing maybe an experience on your experience on subnational measurement, that would be very much welcomed.
Frankly, I cannot give you the information now, but because I'm not an expert on tourism. But if you like, I can give you some information later, so in paper form, or so I can send you some information. But at the moment, I'm not able.
Thank you very much, Jorge. You wanted? Otherwise, I mean, for the other delegates here in the room, I mean, we are a small group. We don't have to make that too complex. And we are aware that there are many initiatives going on at the subnational level. I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the delegates here present at the round table. That from our perspective, this is crucial and fundamental to advance discussions because tourism is very often happening at destination level. And destination level is where we identified the issue of over-tourism, where we see the degradation of destinations taking place and actually where people are living. So there is where the encounter between tourists and residents taking place. And there is where through evidence we can take emotions out of an otherwise difficult discussion. But thank you very much. Jorge?
No, I think as a matter of fact, that's critical. And it would be interesting to know other experiences, for example, on how our country is promoting coordination at the national level. There's a number of ministries that are required, or even a national experience. Yesterday, we've been hearing wonderful stories about how are we informing our consumers, comparable choices, how are we using consumer information. Let us call into another member state, and we promise or stakeholder we welcome to the table, and we promise not to ask very tricky questions, but we invite you to participate in this dialogue. I see brave Switzerland.
Yeah, I'm happy to add something to the cooperation to what you mentioned regarding cooperation. We have added a measure a few years ago where we recognize that architectural and architectural heritage and landscape quality and also biodiversity is very crucial to tourism, especially in Switzerland, because people come for nature and also for architecture, for the city, for the culture. So we realized, I work in the tourism policy department, so we realized we have to work together with the federal offices that are responsible for the environment and also for culture, so that we can better address the needs for also the stakeholders, not just for the tourism stakeholders, because they often think about their offers and the demand they have. So that we can the idea is basically to bring together tourism stakeholders with experts in environment and in culture so that they can understand their needs and also learn from their qualifications. So we have really started to regularly meet with the different departments and exchange ideas. We develop projects together, and it has been shown basically that it works quite well. So we have been doing that since 2017, I think, and we have a list of measurements of commitments that we implement together of about 20 measures already that have mostly already been finished or are ongoing. So yeah, that's something that often gets forgotten when we talk about tourism, that those needs from the environmental needs and the cultural needs have to be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much for raising that important example, which in fact was one of the commitments that was raised and mentioned by the State Secretary. We have a number still of participants that we would like to call upon. But in any case, perhaps what I could do as we trigger more interest, and I invite you to please raise your flag so I don't need to be in the... Can I kindly invite Switzerland to switch off the microphone so that we eliminate the buzz? This is a dialogue, and we don't need to call upon you. We invite you to raise your flag. But perhaps as we do so, it would be interesting, and I will put my UNEP colleague here on the spot. Recently, UNEP launched a very interesting report that complements the background document to this conference, and it is an assessment that was led by the United Nations Environment Programme, working with UNEC, UNWTO, and a number of partners that made an assessment of the recovery of the tourism sector in the context of the post-pandemic policies and actions. And we have here one of the coordinators of this important document, who is Ms. Elena Rey. I would like to invite you, Elena, to perhaps share with us a few of the experiences and lessons learned from that document, and then we will continue inviting the rest of the participants to contribute to this dialogue.
Thank you, Jorge. UNEP has undertaken a survey in the pan-European region to look at how COVID has impacted the environment. And there were several recommendations that came out of this report in terms of how we look forward to build the resilience in future for transforming tourism. And there were 10 recommendations that have been put forward. And I think one of them have already been talked a lot, that it's governance, the need to engage governance, but also to engage all stakeholders in the value chain, not only ministries of tourism, ministries of environment, but the whole chain of ministries that are required to create the enabling environment. It was also recommended to, as we discussed today on infrastructure, how we link science with tourism. So how we can really identify where the pollution problems are. And another recommendation was to bring all these investments. We have a lot of investments that are done on energy efficiency, infrastructure, but sometimes they do not reach the tourism sector. They do not reach SMEs that, in fact, it's 80% of the tourism sector in the European region. So all these come together with the fact that in some countries, culture is very important, and it has been mentioned throughout the plenary, the importance of engaging nature, also local communities in the development of tourism areas, and the need for diversification of the tourism sector. So with increasing floats, with increasing energy prices, energy efficiency, new technologies needs to be taking place. And there is a key role for ministries of environment to make the investment for this tourism sector that is transversal to all other sectors. Thank you.
Elena, thank you very much for that contribution. And we noticed that the NGO to our right-hand side wanted to speak then. Is that correct? Please just introduce yourself. Thank you.
Okay, I am speaking from Ecoforum. As usual, Ecoforum organized and huge preparation work. We had a lot of discussion, and some days before our event, we had final webinar with many NGOs. First of all, we came to the decision that it is too small space for NGOs inside of final documentation. NGO even did not recognize it as one of the main actors. But in the same time, NGO are developing nature positive solution, local solution. For example, NGO in Ukraine, they are integrating native animals into places, nature place like Danube of Delta, and they are organizing local community for to have profit from this and for to organize in very remote locality agriculture and environmental tourism. Also, NGO are organizing pedestrian roads. We are very active, and it should be recognized that NGO are among the key actors. The same we also should to pay attention that media play very important role. Exact media making some locality very popular. Even this is even false solution, like they said that Dracula lived in some castle in Bern in Romania, but he lived on other place in Poenaro Castle. But they have affecting a lot of people, and we need to work with them to push them to right solution, environmental positive solution, to pay attention to some other place to have really good solution. Also, we pay attention to the fact that in very near future, we will have huge shifting of touristic places, because now in Spain, for example, in Turkey became more and more hot, and tourism places will be change their locality to other place, and we need to think together how can we help from place which will be affected by climate change, and about new places which should to be more green. As people from Ukraine, I also would like to say that there is no about tourism exact now in nothing about tourism exact now in Ukraine. For example, instead of cruise ship in Black Sea, we have more than 4,000 mines. But all of us, we are together, believe that it will be the last war on our planet, and we together should to develop new form of tourism in Ukraine. And I am very, very thankful for the solidarity around the world. And I hope for our green future, and that we together will develop new approaches and many touristic green places and new green tourism in Ukraine. Thank you a lot. And of course, you will see declaration of Ecoforum. We describing our result of all our discussions.
Thank you very much for this contribution and reminding us of the role of NGOs and other actors, and a principle which is fundamental to the success of sustainability in tourism, which is a participatory approach. We know that from many governance recommendations, but in tourism it is key to success. This means we cannot talk to each and every stakeholder and need over there good proxies, well-informed proxies which are representing the interests, but at the same time the concerns, and take them back and contribute through their bundling function to desired development of destinations. Jorge, you identified the next speaker?
I do. And I also wanted to, before I call upon MedCities and then to one of our member states on our left, I just want to recognize the key role that Ecoforum in the region and as a representative of stakeholders has played in one of the flagship initiatives of the One Planet Network's Sustainable Tourism Program, which we have been advocating for, presenting, and as a matter of fact, committing today as part of the pledges that have been made to this conference and that we have just celebrated, which is the Global Tourism Plastic Initiative. The Plastic Initiative, as a matter of fact, unites the tourism sector behind a common vision of a circular economy of plastics. It also supports the Glasgow Declaration, which is another flagship initiative that together with UNWTO, we advance to promote the carbon, I would say neutrality, advancing towards carbon neutrality in the tourism operations. And Ecoforum has been a key player on this important initiative. Actually, today, after the side event, we have another discussion that's supported and enabled by one of the local partners of Ecoforum, which is the Cyprus Tourism. Well, it's at the Cyprus Institute, but the key partner's name is the Cyprus Sustainable Tourism Initiative, in which we're going to see quite a number of actions that are being undertaken here at the local level. You are all warmly invited. Now I want to call upon MedCities to share your perspective from your own organization's point of view.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, co-chairs. My name is Josep Canals. I'm the Secretary General of MedCities. MedCities is an organization of almost 70 municipalities from across the Mediterranean region, not only European. We have some capital states like Rome, Tunis, Tirana, but some other important cities like Barcelona, Valencia, Montpellier, or to Cyprus cities like Larnaca and Lemessos. 70, mainly, as I said, in the north of Africa and western and middle western. We like to help each other to try to implement projects. And here I would like to thank you for letting us being here as observer members. And I would like to say, to express also that many of our cities are touristic destinations, important touristic destinations that take advantage of that impact on the economy, but also they receive the negative impacts, what we call externalities of some massification. There is a strong preoccupation among many mayors. I would like to remind the gathering, the call that the mayor of Marseille in February made, and he managed to gather 25 mayors, important cities from the whole region, regarding the impacts of the ports facilities and the cargo, but also the cruises, which is the aspect that we are also tackling here. So just to express this preoccupation on how some of them, including speaking about putting limits, I want to remind the agreement between the Port Authority of Palma in Mallorca and the mayor to establish a number of cruises per day. So this is also important measures on how to boost economy, but is recognizing and acknowledges there are some limits that have to be recognizable. And just to finalize, MedCities is engaged in some Interreg projects. One of them, where we have been the leaders, is called Urban Transport Community. There are some, I like to say, some important political recommendations. We are at the final process of this project, and one of the recommendations is how to reduce the impacts, how to manage mobility, the impacts of extreme mobility and massification on tourist destinations. So I invite you to kindly invite you to maybe read this recommendation on how we can improve touristic destinations by recognizing that we have to be more respectful, because it will be also a manner to have a more sustainable also economy if we respect also the sustainability of the ecosystems. Thank you very much for having us here.
Thank you for those contributions, which, as a matter of fact, point a key component that perhaps has not been sufficiently addressed so far, which is that, of course, we can talk about the reduction of the impact of the tourism operations by adopting policies and measures that help reduce those impacts, make the sustainable tourism operators more sustainable, more circular. But at the end of the day, we also have to understand the carrying capacity of the ecosystems. Yesterday, we were reminded in a wonderful discussion of the communities, as a matter of fact, of the social networks that are there and that absolutely have to be taken into account. We are almost coming to the last few minutes, and we would like to definitely collect one more intervention from any participant that would like us to provide a national perspective. Estonia. Yes, Estonia. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Co-moderator. One aspect that is have to be bear in mind that often together with the people, the products are traveling. One example, in Estonia, we have a deposit system for beverage and low alcohol bottles, the plastic bottles, cans, and the glass. But you can only deliver back those bottles you have bought from Estonia. When you are traveling and buying a bottle from Cyprus, you cannot deliver there. And it's vice versa, that you are buying Estonian beer and you cannot deliver it back here, or if there is a system as that. So we should bear in mind in the circular economy or circularity, we need to somehow eliminate those obstacles as well. At the moment, we have, together with the Latvian government, a project trying to analyze, is it possible to have a deposit system for integrated in both countries, so that it doesn't matter you bought the bottle from Latvia and bring it back in Estonia, you can get back the deposit money as well. And we see that in Estonia, we are believing a lot of digital solutions. And one way forward is trying to include more of those digital information together with the products. It's not only the deposit system, but the products itself, so that when the products will be the waste in other country, you have the information there. At the moment, the European Union, there is a lot of progress in that regard. First regulation, the batteries regulation is in the trialogue, in negotiations, and there should be in the future that the battery should have this digital passport, so that you know how to treat it. And it will be the most of the products that will have in the future this digital information. So I hope it helps in worldwide as well, and helps to eliminate some of the impacts we are producing when we are traveling around. Thank you.
I just want to make a very quick comment, because you have raised an incredibly important component, which is the use and impact of digitalization in promoting a more circular economy and a circular tourism industry and beyond. There are a number of initiatives in which we are working, and perhaps this is an area in which UNECE will come and work further in its next cycle, which is around digital product passports, of course, allowing consumers understand where is their product made, with what type of products. But why haven't we applied this to the tourism industry? Why are people guiding their actions based on, for example, indicators that are not necessarily comparable? They may be subjective as reviews. Why are we not taking this incredible, important, and transcendent agenda? We have established a new avenue of work with MasterCard and Booking that are looking, as a matter of fact, into these key implications on sustainability, circular economy, big data, and digitalization. Now I hand back to my co-moderator.
Jorge, it's, as everybody is aware, coming to an end. The time is ending, and summarizing the discussion, I first want to inject a dimension which was not mentioned, which is outside of the summary. And I just wanted to bring to the attention of those here not too familiar with tourism, the fact that very often the international dimension of tourism is noted and known, which is forecasted by UNWTO, or was forecasted to reach in the year 2030, 1.8 billion international tourist arrivals. We are absolutely convinced, and before the State Secretary of Croatia was mentioning that we are reaching beyond that dimension. Before the pandemic, we had already 1.4 billion international tourist arrivals per year accounted for What is more important from the environmental perspective is that we are not counting the domestic and other dimensions of tourism. And we did that when we conducted the climate forecasting for the year 2030 for tourism, for its international and domestic dimension. And we estimated over there that we will have by the year 2030 more than 30 billion international and domestic trips per year. If you put that into relation of the world population, you will know that each and every individual is accounted for at least having done 1, 2, or 3 trips, on average more than 2 per year. That means mobility, as it was mentioned before by several of the delegations, is a key factor to be addressed and to be seen as necessary for partnerships. Partnerships between ministries. We know that 75% of the carbon emissions attributed to tourism are deriving from mobility. So if we are addressing that, not only the international dimension, please, but also very strongly the domestic dimension, and I believe that that was part of the intervention from Austria, because we know that this is there, especially cars, and we need over there to find solutions to that. Not only is it for the international dimension, the flights, but for domestic tourism, it is the cars. So that was a very important point. And I heard here the issue of partnerships from Switzerland as well, being pointed out as important for addressing their meaningful issues you have as a tourism policy authority, and the wish over there to get other perspectives, to take in these partnerships, to make partnerships true. We heard here also then from the NGO perspective how important that is, to not only formulate a claim, but at the same time contribute to solutions and think about how tourism can develop in a dialogue into a desired tourism and development and societal development. Participatory approaches I mentioned before. You smile because I'm summarizing over here a few contributions, but I'm adding a bit so that we have a round parcel to be delivered. What I liked also was then recognizing the limits of our resources and bringing that to the attention, whether this is right now cruises or other resources, which are limited in tourism. We very often mention that, but at the same time, we just see that as a limit. As I just mentioned, tourism will grow. That is a factor which we know it has something to do with the growth of the middle class globally. So it's not just something we can ignore, and we have to address that properly. So as the subject was circularity of our discussion, we see how important, and that's what I can recognize, Jorge, from a tourism perspective, and I'm pretty sure you echoed that as well. Circularity is one of the keys to resolve that problem of this growth. We heard here also the limitations of circularity when it comes to boundaries, when it comes to countries. There are many examples where we see these limitations, illogical, but in the nature of competences. So that is something important to be addressed in fora like that, where boundaries are actually no longer a core issue, but the experiences are triggering then action across countries. The most important thing from our side with what I want to conclude, Jorge, is the need of improving our measurement, not aiming for the best measurement in the world, but starting to measure. We know that that was here in many of the side events, the major issue, how we improve measurement of circularity. Sorry for having asked the direct question. Jorge corrected me right away. But I think, yeah, we wanted to contribute here as the moderators also a bit of additional insights into the discussion. With that, from the tourism perspective, again, we are very happy having been here part of a ministerial conference of the Ministries of Environment. And as I said before, it is for us a pleasure to continue the collaboration. Thank you very much.
Just to thank you, Dirk, for that wonderful summary, and to thank all the participants, not only those that are here, but actually all the statements that we heard in the plenary, which as a matter of fact, show a remarkable commitment by UNEC member states to promote a more circular economy in the tourism sector. So thank you, all of you. Thank you, Dirk, and thank you to the wonderful secretary. Thank you.